It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast, because I never do that to you guys. Never, ever, ever. I bring it every episode, 30 minutes approximately, making sure you know everything going on around the National Football League. You get the former player's perspective, and you get some wonderful guests like Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, who will join me momentarily. I do have to tell you, we are presented by DraftKings. I love those guys. I love DraftKings, whether it's daily fantasy or sportsbook. Please do it over there. That supports the show. I also love those of you that take the next step to help us grow, whether it's social media or taking advantage of a sponsor, whatever. I will announce this week's winners a little bit later. I am that excited to get to our guest first and foremost.
The Big Show.
All right, so he's been on the show before, so a lot of you probably remember him. Jim and I were, I guess, I don't know what the term would be. I was a player, he was a scout. I don't know if we were teammates or colleagues, or what would you call that, Jim? It was Washington, 2001, and then New England, 2005, 2006. If you're a scout for the team and I'm a player for the team, are we teammates? Are we colleagues? What are we going with?
Hey, man, we're teammates. We're all pulling in the same direction, right? We're trying to win a Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And of course, the 1 year I was with the Patriots, we lose in the divisional round. I didn't even get to the conference championship game. And then they trade me the next year to Cleveland for a conditional 7th round pick, which, as you know, Jim, is the highest honor that can be bestowed upon an NFL player, the vaunted conditional 7th round pick. Check out Jim, by the way, on social media at Jim Nagy, NAGY _Super Bowl, SB Senior Bowl, and check out at Senior Bowl. I love the Reese's Senior Bowl for a million reasons. It's by far the best pre-draft all-star game, and I literally am going to go later today to the Hotel Hershey, 10 minutes from my house, to meet up with Andrew Brandt, who happens to be there. I'm having lunch with Andrew Brandt in Hershey,
Nice.
right near the factory where they make Reese's, which is amazing. I love even the shirt for people watching at youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. That's a heck of a logo you got there, Jim.
Yeah, it's a strong logo. That's cool. Andrew's going to be up there. I miss being up there. I haven't been up to Hershey in a couple of years, but and I will say this. Let's circle back on the teammates thing. Not even close to what you were doing in the locker room. The locker room is the most important thing. You guys were way more important than any scout has ever been. But hey, man, I still think we were teammates.
I totally agree, and I know what you mean. I'm curious, Jim, before we get into, the Senior Bowl this year and this year's draft, because obviously by the nature of what Jim does, think about it, 18 years as an NFL scout, so he's as qualified as anybody, probably more so because he is living and breathing this every day to talk about this draft class. How are you liking the role, Jim? Do you miss being on a team and feeling like you are trying to win a Super Bowl? Or are you enjoying all the different challenging aspects of the Senior Bowl and trying to grow that thing?
Yeah, this time of year I do miss. I miss the April draft meetings. I miss the strategy. Draft day is different now. So I miss parts of it, but I love this job. It's been an awesome job. It's allowed me to grow in a lot of different areas because it's not just football. I mean, you're involved in sponsorships and community stuff and, obviously media like we're doing right now. It's been a challenging job. It's been a ton of fun. Like we announced our Senior Bowl Hall of Fame this morning. It was fun putting that class together and connecting with some of the, the Von Millers and the Patrick Willises and Phillip Rivers. Great class. Dak Prescott, Kevin Falk. That was kind of our 5-man class this year. So we got that event in the summertime attached with the celebrity golf event. So there's some really cool things year round that make this job a ton of fun. Again, connecting with the Mobile community. with a lot of stuff we do down here. But no, and I love the challenge of putting a roster together. Again, I worked for 18 years in the National Football League, and I never got to make a decision. I never made a pick, and here I get to pick like 125 guys a year. So yeah, it's a lot of fun, Ross. It's a lot of fun.
You know what, Jim? I got to be honest with you, man. That would be very difficult for me. That would be not what you're doing now, but think about scouts. You invest your whole day. I mean, your whole year. You're traveling hotel to hotel. You're grinding, and then the decision maker, or heck, maybe it's the owner or the coach. They just don't care what your opinion is, or they take into account and they decide to do something else anyway. I mean, I feel like that would drive me nuts, man.
It's bigger than you, right? All scouts want is to have a voice. They just want their voice heard. At the end of the day, if the decision maker, the GM, head coach, in Washington's case, the owner, sometimes that happened my 1 year in Washington. The owner made a couple of those picks the year I was in Washington. But you just want to say, if they go in a different direction, so be it. I mean, you're being paid to give your opinion. It is a grind, Ross. I mean, I will say that about the scouting life. I mean, unless you've done it, I don't think you can appreciate how hard that life is, being on the road 200 nights a year. And just, going from Fairfield to Courtyard every week. So it's demanding. I used to get asked a lot, like flying on planes, and I'd have my laptop up and watching tape on a plane. And people would ask, do you love what you do? And I'm like, of course you do. If you didn't love it, you wouldn't do it. It's because the quality of life is not great. But again, it's the collective effort. And I know every team I was a part of, you get behind every pick. You're just excited about the guys that can hopefully come in and help you get to that Super Bowl.
Senior Bowl this year. Give me a couple guys that really stood out to you, really impressed you. It is always noteworthy to me, Jim, how much of an impact it can have on guys' draft status. I mean, there's guys like Travis Jones or Christian Watson, just two names off the top of my head that nobody was talking about as potential late first rounders, literally nobody, till they came to the Senior Bowl and performed well. And now that seems like a real possibility for them. I guess two-part question, which, by the way, you're never supposed to do. But just guys that's out to you this year, and just how cool it is for you to see the impact that a guy's Senior Bowl week can have on their draft status.
Yeah, I mean, Ross, I promote the heck out of this game, man, but it's easy for me because I do believe in it. I really believe in the value of the game, and coming down here and being around these decision makers, because, again, it's one thing to have a scout like me on the road going into draft meetings talking about a player, but these GMs and head coaches, they're huge. They're just huge. They're just guys like us, right? And like, they feel more connection to the guys they evaluate themselves. That's just human nature. So if they're down here seeing these guys, and they don't have a chance to get out in the fall and see a lot of college games. So no, I do believe in the value of the game. I think every year you can, look at 25, 50 players that help themselves immensely. So in this year's group, yeah, a couple of guys you brought up, I think Christian Watson, you can always point to the small school guys, right? Like Christian Watson was probably a 4th or 5th round pick before coming down here. That's where we had him graded. That's where the league, I do vet these guys out when we get to like the back end of the roster. I vet these guys out with the NFL to make sure we're bringing the guys they want to see. The rosters are for them. So, the league had Christian Watson on day 3. Troy Anderson, the linebacker from Montana State, was a guy that, he was kind of a late addition for us in December. We really liked Troy's speed on tape. He was, he's a converted offensive player, running back, quarterback, has maybe the coolest resume of anyone in this draft class. But when we vetted him out to the league, there was still a handful of teams that saw Troy Anderson as a Taysom Hill gadget player on offense and special teams guy. And now so he's probably like a 5th or 6th round pick. Now you talk to teams, it doesn't sound like he's getting out of the top 50 picks. He could go somewhere in the middle of the 2nd round. So those are huge, huge jumps. And then, Travis Jones is a guy that played his butt off down here, kind of played down here what I thought he would play on UConn tape this year. It didn't really come together for him for whatever reason. And then I think the other guys that really benefit are guys that are maybe used a little differently than they were used in college. So like Jalen Petrie at Baylor was more of a slot, apex defender for Baylor. He played more high safety here, was on the hash more. You saw him in a lot of more man coverage situations in the one-on-ones. And then a guy like Perion Winfrey, who was a zero tech, two tech, playing head up on the center and guard his whole career at Oklahoma. And then he comes down here and they shade him over the guard at 3 technique and they can't block him all week. So now you've got a guy with almost 35 plus inch arms, super explosive, that can get upfield and create havoc. And again, so those guys like that, I think helped themselves a ton as well.
Such a great point. Both of those, the small school guys proving they can do it against the bigger school guys, and then guys that maybe had a scheme that was somewhat limiting or maybe not the best for their skill set. It's funny that the names you mentioned, Jim, I called the national championship game FCS for Westwood 1. So I saw Watson. I saw Anderson. Anderson's resume is crazy. I mean, he's the all-time touchdown leader in school history, rushing, played quarterback, then running back. And he's big. I mean, I saw him on the field. He's a nice sized kid and he runs extremely well. And then Watson, somebody has to explain to me how a kid that big and fast from Tampa got to North Dakota State. Those are the things that like blow me away. He is big and he is fast. I mean, they would give him the ball on reverses. I mean, he's there. I remember, and I thought, okay, where is he from? Minnesota or Nebraska? You know what I mean? Like, figured he's probably from Minneapolis. I'm like, Tampa. How does he? I mean, honestly, Jim, I know an FBS program that as soon as North Dakota State offers a kid, they get an alert and they watch the kid because they know that they're that good at finding guys.
They are. A couple stories on those two guys, Ross. So one, I can't remember the player, but there is a guy at a Power 5, a legitimate prospect as well. I can't remember who it is, that went to Christian Watson's high school. So all these Power 5s were going in to see that guy, and none of them took Christian Watson, which is crazy. It's not like he was just at some high school in Tampa that nobody was going to, so they just missed him. They were there to see this 4 or 5 star guy, and they didn't see the 6'3" guy that runs 4 threes. So that's incredible. And then the Troy Anderson thing, I'll say this about Troy, like there hasn't been a player in my 4 years here. And again, that's not like a huge sample size, but it's over 500 players. Nobody surpassed my expectations more than Troy. Like again, the size, he is 6'0", so he's right under 6'4". He's a big guy. The speed showed up. He goes to Indy and he runs 4.42 officially. He's the fastest linebacker at the combine. That did show up on tape. But what didn't show up, what showed up down here was better change in direction. Had some reservations on that. You saw that in coverage. I mean, the guy can stick with people. His instincts on defense, his reactions were way better down here than they were on Montana State tape. And again, part of that, you're giving him a little bit of a pass as an evaluator because he'd only played on defense for 2 years. But to kind of see it all come together against really good competition down here, the instincts part really started to show itself. So he was, that guy's helped himself more than anybody. And now, they're probably both going to go at minimum in the second round. And like you said, I see Christian Watson being mocked in the late first to the Chiefs and the Packers in a lot of these mock drafts. So, both those guys are incredible stories.
Yeah, not to spend too much time on those guys. I think I heard that Watson might have been like 5'11", 6 foot in high school. Somebody, or maybe when he was a junior or something. So I think I'm going to try to say that was the reason, because I think somebody said that to me. And then I'm totally with you on Anderson. I didn't love his instincts or his ability to get off blocks, but he just hasn't been doing it very long. It's kind of like, Micah Parsons at linebacker, right? He just hadn't done it that long. And there's a lot of ability and the chance to do more. Give me talk to me about, Jim, overall this year's draft. Maybe strengths and weaknesses that you see overall. Just kind of a big picture for people that don't really get into the weeds, but they want to know kind of what this draft has and what this draft doesn't have.
Well, I think it's been talked about a lot, Ross, that maybe in that top 10, top 15, there's a lot of like true slam dunk, check all the boxes, difference makers, right? And that's what you want to get when you bottom out and you win single digit games and you're drafting up high. You hope you can get a guy like that. And this draft might not have as many as some other years, but what it does have is really good depth for one. We just talk about our first 3 years of the Senior Bowl. Going into the fall, we are around 500 names on the board after doing all the junior tape. And that's all levels. That's, D3 all the way up to FBS. This year, because of COVID and the guys, opting to use that extra COVID year, we were over 700. So it added about 200 names onto our board for our game. So that number is swell. So you're gonna have day 3 is gonna be really good. You're gonna get a bunch of guys that make teams out of the 6th and 7th round this year. So that's really good depth. And I really think the meat of the draft, rounds 2 through 4 are really good. I think if you're a team in the teens, you almost want to trade back because you can get the same player in the 30s and probably into the 40s that you can get into the late teens. So I think that's a really good meat of the draft. I think you're gonna see a lot of teams wanting to trade back. I think the problem's going to be, trying to find a partner that's going to want to come up.
What about guys in particular that you are higher or lower on than, the consensus or where you're seeing them go on mock drafts?
Oof, that's a good one. There's some guys that the hard part for me, Ross, with this job, when you're a scout, you block out all the noise. Like I'm on Twitter all the time now for this job. I have to be, but I never had a social media account. I didn't pay attention to anything.
Right.
I always tell young scouts, form your own opinion first, watch all the junior tape, get into the fall, watch the senior stuff. And then when you feel really convicted on what the player is for you, then it's okay to kind of open up and see what else is out there to gauge other opinions. There's nothing wrong with that. Hard part for me is that I see the narrative's already been spelled out on a lot of these juniors that I haven't watched. And then I circle back on those guys, in February, March, and April and do some work for teams. I'll have buddies call me like, hey, can you look at this guy for me? And it's hard. It's hard. Every year there's some juniors that stick out. You're like, man, how is this guy being talked about as a first round pick? Like, I just don't see it. There's a few guys in that category this year. I won't name names because that'll upset agents, and then we got to get players in the game next year, and I can't piss agents off.
All right, so how about guys you're higher on?
A guy that I love, and again, everyone likes him. He's a really good player, but Zion Johnson from Boston College, to me, is, you talk about conviction. That's what this whole evaluation thing's about. Zion Johnson, to me, there's no way you're going to miss on the guy. He reminds me of Rodney Hudson as a player. We drafted Rodney when I was in Kansas City, and he's had a phenomenal career, multiple Pro Bowls, all that. But when you get to spend time with Zion and to see how intelligent he is and how driven he is, like, he'd never played center in a competitive environment before the Senior Bowl. He embraced that challenge. He was down here after practice. He's the only guy in the last 4 years that I remember staying after practice to work on his craft. He was out doing shotgun snaps well after practice one day. He's just wired right, Ross. To me, if you draft him, everyone, you'll debate. You're in the minority here, but a lot of people think you can wait on interior offensive linemen. But to me, if you're drafting a guy you're convicted is going to go to multiple Pro Bowls, what's wrong with taking that guy in the middle of the first round? I don't think that's too high. So, if you can draft that player, it doesn't matter if you take him at 15 or 25. Who cares? So I think Zion's a guy that I have a lot of conviction on, and again, like Perion Winfrey is a guy that not seeing a lot of mock drafts right now. And again, you never want to overvalue any part of the process. Even the Senior Bowl, I think there's the limit. You don't want to be jacking guys up around the board, but in a case like Perion's, when you see, the usage be so different and him be such a different player, I think you have to say, oh my God, how lucky are we that we were able to see him do what we think. A lot of teams were probably projecting him to play 3 technique, but hadn't seen it. Now you've seen it. So, I just take a lot of investment in what he showed here in Mobile that week.
It's funny, Jim, because every year in free agency, these interior linemen, centers, guards, they get paid. Like Brandon Sheriff, they get paid a lot. Right. So the logic of not taking them high makes no sense because that's the market is what the market is when they become free agents and teams are like, we need that guy. So if you can get a guy that you like Zion Johnson, then do it. The other thing is, last thing, and this is just, I was up at Penn State recently, and I didn't realize this, Jim, that I had them do my height and weight, everything. And I guess I knew my hands weren't that big, 9.5. I was 6'4" and 3'8", so I think I've shrunk a little bit, maybe. I knew I had short arms, Jim. This is 2001. I'm undrafted at Princeton, so nobody ever even told me. My arm length, Jim, 30.25. 30 point. The combine had two guys under 30. So why am I saying all this, right? I think I was probably below average in every single category, but being honest, like way above average competitive toughness, way above average football IQ. And like, that's why I was able to last for 7 years. You talk about the makeup or whatever, like Zion Johnson, that matters a lot, especially for offensive linemen.
Especially for offensive line, Ross. Like if you're going to err, and this was told to me when I first got into scouting, and I've seen it. I've seen it over and over. It's a truism in scouting. Like if you're going to give in any one area with an offensive lineman, give on athleticism. I would take a lesser athlete on the offensive line if he's got high-end football makeup, competes, tough, smarts, all that, durability, all that stuff that makes good NFL dependable linemen. I would take a lesser athlete, right? Than a high-end athlete that maybe is average in all those other categories. You're going to end up with a better pro that has the stuff that you had, right? I think that's the one position on a roster where you can really do that. I think you want high-end athletes across the board, maybe everywhere else, but I really feel like all those other compensating factors with the makeup apply most to offensive line.
Check him out on social media at Jim Nagy _SB. You can check out at Senior Bowl as well. It's an unbelievable event. Jim's an awesome guy. Really appreciate the time, Jim. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Ross. I appreciate it, man. You do great work, man. It's been fun watching you kind of take off with this media stuff, man. Keep doing your thing.
Thanks, man. Likewise. Really appreciate it. I also really appreciate Lumen Skin. This is awesome. I'm like a week in with it. My wife is showing me how to use all of it. Right before I go to bed, I put the gel under my eyes for the under eye dark circles, the wrinkles. It's really easy. All you have to do is take a 2-minute quiz on their website, and they'll tell you exactly which routine is best for you based on your skincare needs. All of their products come with instructions, so it's really easy to protect your skin from potential damage or future acne. Plus, they only use natural ingredients that actually work. Listen, I know for most of you, you're probably like me, skincare is not a high priority, but why not? Like, what if it's really simple and takes less than like 90 seconds of your day and can make a difference? Why not? I'm all over the gel that I put on. I got the charcoal washes. It's awesome. Level up your skincare game with Lumen Skin today. Go to lumenskin.com/Ross to get your free trial of Lumen's products. That's LUMIN skin.com/Ross to get your free trial of Lumen's products. lumenskin.com/Ross.
Tux Takes.
Hey, Ross, good morning. Well, we have talked a bunch this week about guys like Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin. They're not happy with the money that they're getting playing on these rookie deals. Well, Deebo officially comes out, tells Jeff Darlington that he's requested a trade from San Francisco.
Wow. Yeah, this is really interesting. It's obviously huge news. He's a tremendous player. He and George Kittle, I would say, are the two most impactful skill position players for the Niners, with Samuel being the most dynamic. What makes this one different What makes this one interesting is that it's not about the money, reportedly. I don't know how it got to this point because supposedly the Niners are willing to pay him a lot of money. Debo has decided, or maybe his agents helped him, or maybe it's family and friends, but it appears to be about usage. He didn't want to get into it, but I don't think he wants to be running the ball that much. I don't think he thinks that that's good for the longevity of his career. He wants to he's obviously going to get a big second contract. He wants to play all that second contract. He wants to get a third contract. You know me, I will never begrudge a player doing whatever they think is right to get the most financial security that they possibly can for their family. Never. I guess my question is, can't they figure it out with the Niners that maybe they only use them on 1 or 2 runs a game? Or, who's going to trade a lot for Debo and give him more than $20 million a year and then not ever have him carry the ball? I mean, that's part of why you want to trade for him in the first place, is how dynamic he is with the ball in his hands. But evidently he doesn't want the ball in his hands as much. This is a really unique one. Really unique one. Going to be fascinating to see how it plays out. Now that it's public, I think he probably does get traded, and I think the Niners try to draft somebody else very similar to Debo Samuel, and they get a bunch load of picks from a team like the New York Jets who have some familiarity with him, and they need a player like him for Zach Wilson. Would not surprise me at all. And listen, I would just say to Debo Samuel, little bit careful what you wish for. Little bit. Because Kyle Shanahan is part of the reason why he's going to get paid so much in the first place.
Tuck's Takes.
New York Giants are having their voluntary mini camp, and one notable no-show, Kadarius Toney.
Just don't understand this. It is voluntary. Guys can do what they think is best. You got a new coach. You want to be a big part of the offense. They're not sending them the playbook. They're not mailing guys out the playbook. I don't see how this helps him. I can't imagine his agent thinks this is a good idea. I think you want to do everything right with the new GM, the new coaching staff, so that they can trust you, so that you know the offense, so that you become a focal point of the offense, so you get a lot of money. I would love to hear the logic of this one, if there is any, as it relates to Kadarius Toney.
Tuck's Takes.
Couple of quick points about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their training camp goes back to St. Vincent College, and we have learned a little bit more about Dwayne Haskins as the details emerge from his fatality.
So St. Vincent College is amazing. That setting for Steelers training camp is awesome. I've only been there once. I'd like to go again. It's glorious. And I love teams that go away for training camp. It's just cool. I just think, and if it's open to everybody, anybody that wants to come that day can come. That's kind of how I grew up, going to Eagles training camp at Westchester. Then they were at Lehigh. I think it's very, very cool. I understand why they don't do it. So I think it's awesome that the Steelers do it. As for Dwayne Haskins, it makes me even feel worse, I think, Bri. I guess there's 911 calls from his wife, and he ran out of gas. So he was walking, I guess, to try to get to a gas station to get gas, presumably. I don't know. It's one of those things where it just leaves probably more questions than answers. But something like that makes you feel even worse about it, because it just seems like it so easily could have been avoided on so many levels, whether it's making sure you have enough gas or Maybe you get an Uber. I don't know. I'm hurting for his family because I can only imagine what they're going through. No easy transition to talking about the winners. No Mike Singletary. Wouldn't feel right. I do, though, have winners to give out, and I appreciate what you guys do. I appreciate Rob Stanley, who didn't just like Greg Cosell on Facebook talking about Frank Gore as a first ballot Hall of Famer. He loved it. So we love, Rob, that you loved the Frank Gore post on Facebook.com/Ross Tucker NFL. I also love Scott Parkinson, who got 100 flowers, I believe, for his wife. That's awesome. I think you can still use the code football and we get credit for it over at 100flowers.com. You can also, for Mother's Day, now would actually be the perfect day to get her a story from myfrontpagestory.com. And then the YouTube shout out, Evan Krylo, I'm going to say, Krilow. He said, you got a sub, brother. I forget what else he said, but you got a sub, got a subscription. I love it. Just let me know that you subscribe. Make a comment. You can even say just that. Hey, I'm just here for the free cameo. I'm just here for the YouTube shout out. YouTube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. I love it. Have an awesome weekend. I'm going to be tailgating on Saturday at the Penn State Blue-White game. I never get to go to a game with my family. I never get to tailgate. I can't wait. Going to be awesome. If you happen to be there, say hello. A couple of daddy sodas before the game. Other than that, we'll be back bright and early Monday morning with a special Greg Cosell episode. Yeah, linebackers and safeties with the civilian GOAT early Monday morning. I think we're done here.
Not so fast. We got a shout out to Pizza Boy Brewing, Sporticulture, HumanHeadNYC.com, SteakhouseSports.com, Go-Bengals.com, and of course, Evergreen Economics. Now, I think we're done here.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, RossTucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.
A lot of times on the show, I mentioned DraftKings. Here's what you need to know. You got to be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, or Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, or in Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. By the way, if what I was talking about included a deposit bonus, doesn't always, sometimes it does. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough, and deposit bonuses are paid out in site credit.